Hello beautiful people, welcome back to the Real Rep family. Thank you as always for joining me. I'm sure some of you tuned into my last video, or not last, but one of the couple videos ago, about beginner snakes. And I wanted to do another one on beginner lizards because I know that everyone's either like a lizard or a snake person, you know, and I know there's a couple iffy ones that fit in there. Today I'm going to be doing the top 5 beginner lizards to own. Now, I know there's a lot of confusion on this. There's always been a lot of confusion on this. And again, mine can just be opinion. Everybody has their own opinion and is entitled to it. But I really do feel like this list is good, okay? So we're just going to hit it right off the bat. Now, number 1 is, I think, a couple people have agreed with me, one of the easiest lizards to own. Now, number 1 is a crested gecko. I have 2 of them personally. If you've been on my Instagram at The Real Rep Family, the same as my YouTube. They are so simple. Now, one of the first defining factors on why I think they're a great beginner lizard is because 1, they don't get big. They stay very small. You're looking at maybe max this size if we're not including tail. If you get like a really big one, or if you're lucky and get a really big one. They also have a very kind demeanor. They're not known to be super aggressive. Of course, there's gonna be that couple in there, just like there is with anything, that's gonna be pretty nasty or pretty mean or bitey or whatever the case may be. But 98% of the crested geckos I've ever seen or come in contact with have been super friendly and docile. And even if they are a little crazy, it's like they just jump a lot or they run fast. It's not like they like bite or anything like that. So I feel like they're very hesitant to bite. Now, another positive thing about this, or about this species, is that they are, I feel, very easy to handle. The only thing that, again, could be hard is when they get jumpy, like Chili. He's a pain in my ass to handle, but at the same time, he's fairly simple. You see where he's jumping, you put your hand out, he'll jump to it. Otherwise, you just keep moving him from hand to hand. With that being said, it can be kind of harder for a smaller kid to have, especially because I feel like they're much squishier. So I feel like that should be something to keep in mind. Now, another positive to these guys is that they don't really require insects, I guess you could say. I'm never one to say that they shouldn't, because variety is always key, but some people feel like they can supplement actual live insects with the fig and insect diet, or just the insect Pangea. Now, if you don't know what this is because you don't have a crested gecko, they literally make things powdered form and you mix it with water and they eat it. It's like a little smoothie that they eat, and you feed it to them. That's their main diet. That's what most people feed them. Now, a lot of people will feed them little mealworms, superworms, or crickets, or roaches. Depends on your crested gecko. I've tried to feed mine bugs outside of crickets and they want nothing to do with it. Whether I put it in a dish or tongue feed them, they don't want it. So I've tried, but I've also seen some people who have crested geckos that will tongue feed to anything. Hornworms, like, it's crazy. I buy crickets for them every once in a while. I toss them in there and I let them go to town. 80% of the time I feed them Pangea. I do feed them a wide variety. I do have fig and insects, so they're getting that protein, and they're also getting the watermelon, the papaya. And what's also cool about them is you can make your own mashes yourself. You can mash up your own strawberries, or mash up your own bananas, or make your own little smoothie for them. And other brands like Repashy outside of Pangea come out with seasonal ones. I know I had one for a while that was called Cherry Bomb. They really liked that, and it's just kind of supplementing and trying to figure out which one your crested gecko really likes, because they do act like people and have favorites. I could go on for what I feel like forever as to why crested geckos are one of the best lizards, or best even reptiles to start out with. I would honestly suggest them over maybe even a snake, just because there's like zero intimidation. They don't require UVB also. So I know there's a lot of studies that have gone into this, or discussions or opinions or whatever that may be, as to whether or not reptiles that don't really require UVB, if it's beneficial to them or not. I've heard some things as in that they live a longer life, that they have more color, or that they're more active when they have UVB supplemented into their life, but they don't get MBD or any issues with their bones or anything like that if they don't have UVB. With that being said, you still have to make sure you're supplementing their diet with calcium that includes D3 inside of it, just to make sure that they're still getting those calcium in their bones, and that they're still, because they can still get MBD, but just not from a lack of UVB. It's more like a lack of the calcium that they should be receiving. So you can mix that in with their Pangea, you can put it on their bugs, anything like that. But like I said, these guys are super easy. They also don't require a super large enclosure. It's more of a vertical one rather than a wide one, so they can get, you can get a lot more space for your animal without taking up as much space. That brings us to number 2. I'm not going to go super in depth on number 2, and you'll understand why if you're an experienced herb keeper or an experienced learner in this field, even if you don't own them, is a gargoyle gecko. Now number 2, they're not very different from crested geckos, but they are a different species, which is why I'm including them. The same reason in the snake video I included like milk snakes and corn snakes and king snakes. I feel like they're all extremely similar, but they are a different animal and they do have different personalities. Now gargoyle geckos I feel do get a little bigger. They definitely do. They're not really as known for dropping their tail as crested geckos are. You see most gargoyles with their tail, whereas you see most crested geckos without their tail. And they do come in a lot of different colors compared to crested geckos. They do, as crested geckos, come in a lot of morphs. But the way that gargoyle geckos come are a lot different. They look a lot different. I feel like they're a lot more based on the Pangea or Repashy diet, or there's other brands out there than those two. But just that they will rely a lot more on the fruit. Now, like I said, they're very, very similar. They have, I think, bigger eyes, and they have a little bit different shape of a body, but overall they are very, very similar. Like I said, just a different species. In that case, you may need a larger enclosure, but other than that, very simple. So that kind of knocks down our first 2. Now our number 2 is a leopard gecko. Now the reason why I say these, and crested geckos and leopard geckos and gargoyles and number 4, is because none of them require UVB. Now UVB is something that I feel can be tricky. When do you replace the bulbs? Do I know to get 10.0 or 5.0? Do I need to get T8 or T5? Like there's just a bunch of different confusing things when you think about UV, what kind of calcium they need, all that fun stuff. So if all you have to worry about is the right calcium to purchase and the food and the animal itself, I feel like that dulls down on your worries. Leopard geckos have a little bit different of a personality. If you're looking for personality and you're looking for something that's probably gonna hang out with you and sit on your lap, you're gonna want a leopard gecko over a crested gecko. This is because, I mean, think about it. One's a arboreal species, meaning living in the trees. One's a terrestrial species, meaning it roams around on the ground. If you've ever contacted any arboreal animal versus a terrestrial animal, you'll always know that terrestrial are just way more chill. That's just their nature. That's how they are, like, programmed, is the way I could best explain it. They just have a lot more chill disposition than arboreal species do. These guys, I would say, from the most part of their life, you can do a 20 long, but I feel like they really do deserve a 30 breeder. That gives them a lot of space, a lot of room to roam, a lot of different options for hides and ramps and different places to hang out. You know what I'm saying? So I think they deserve a 30 breeder, but I've also seen some people keep their 20 longs absolutely immaculate and they live great lives. And so I think it kind of depends on the leopard gecko's personality, if they like to explore or if they like to just kind of sit in one spot all the time and be lazy. That's something that you would kind of figure out as you own them, because you know, you can always upgrade the enclosure. Their diet is a little different. They're not gonna be really eating any Pangea unless you were to make them like a grub pie or something like that by Repashy. Otherwise, they're not really gonna eat any powdered foods like that. They do require a lot of calcium. A lot of people will even leave a dish of calcium and they will actually eat the calcium alone, as they know for whatever reason that that's a requirement in their diet, and they will just eat the calcium. Kind of like bearded dragons, where they're not going to drink a lot of water like that, but I think a shallow water dish is always helpful. That way if they are thirsty, they can drink whenever they want to. And then food wise, as I was getting there, but I lost track, of course, they're going to eat a lot of bugs. That's their main diet. They're insectivores. They're not going to eat any fruit like bearded dragons or sometimes chameleons will. They're going to be based on insects, so that includes mealworms, roaches, hornworms, waxworms, black soldier fly larvae, crickets, butterworms. You can feed them all that. Obviously in a more in-depth video there's frequencies and quantities and you know, everything like that in which you should feed these worms, just because they're different in fat and protein and everything like that, water. So that's for another video, but this video just going over a simple explanation of why they're the best or why they're good beginners. So that's all they're gonna kind of eat. And I know some people like to deter away from the bugs, which is why I put the crested geckos first, because I feel like that's an easy way to introduce your mom or parents. There's a lack of bugs, a very minimal amount of bugs. I feel like the most minimal, next to like a Eurymastix, but I feel like they're not a beginner lizard. Another reason is, like I said, they don't require UVB. They only require that calcium heavily. They do eat pretty simple bugs. It's within a section of maybe 10 of them, and it's very simple to pick the ones that you want, or pick the ones that you can get, or pick the ones that are gonna be your staple. It's very easy. That part's not hard. And they are terrestrial, like I said, so it's very easy to get cool decorations, simple decorations to incorporate in their enclosure, and they have a really cool attitude. Now, that brings us to number 4, and number 4, like I said, is a sister of number 3, and that is an African fat tail. African fat tails are practically the exact same. I would say the only difference that I can think of off the top of my head, I may be missing some, is that they like it a little more humid. So that could be like a little harder of a species. I would also say that for crested geckos and gargoyles. Maybe if you have a crested and you want another gecko, go for the gargoyle. If you have Leo and you want a harder one, a little bit harder of a one, maybe go for an African fat tail. They do require a little more humidity than the regular leopard geckos do. So little stages you can move yourself with, which I felt like I did for the same in the snake, beginner snake video. And really, like I said, there's not much more on the African fat tail, but just as I'm putting the name out there, that way you know it exists. They're very freaking cute. I really won't own a Leo like that. They're just not the cutest to me, but for some reason I want an African fat tail. Now, they're literally the same. They look a tad bit different. I feel like their heads are different shapes and their tails are definitely different. But other than that, they're extremely easy. Like, oh, and another thing I wanted to point out real quick about the Leos and the African fat tails. The only thing that I would really say to watch out for is handling wise. They can drop their tails pretty easy, just the way crested geckos can. And sometimes, depending on the case, it can be more detrimental to a leopard gecko losing all the fat in its tail, losing all those stored nutrients, than per se a crested gecko who just uses it as like a extra limb. In all honesty, but they still balance just fine, they still climb just fine, they act just fine, they live just fine. With that being said, now that we went through 1, 2, 3, and 4, now we're gonna move to number 5. Now, number 5 I feel is one of the most misjudged, misbought, miscared for reptiles in the entire community by far. I have seen more of these animals given up at an older age, more of these animals with metabolic bone disease, more of these animals in really, really shitty situations. And more of these animals just die due to malnourishment, lack of care, than any other reptile I've ever seen. Which is really sad because I own one of these, and I'm sure you already know what I'm talking about, especially like I said, if you've been in the reptile world for quite a bit, and that's bearded dragons. Bearded dragons are really cool looking. I feel like when you walk into a PetSmart or a Petco, that's the first animal they suggest, and in all honesty, it should be the last. Now, I didn't put chameleons on here because I feel like chameleons are harder than bearded dragons are by far, just because of their humidity, and they're known to be assholes, and I just think that they're just not the best. Now, with bearded dragons, they're known to be very, very friendly, very docile, very sweet animals, but the problem is, which is why I don't suggest them to people, is because they never know what bedding to use, what UVB to use, if to use any, calcium powder, their diet, it's just all over the place. Now I'm gonna give a little spiel on bearded dragon care here, not into depth. Obviously I wanna do that in another video, but just something light, so if you want a bearded dragon and you wanna start doing research, you kinda get the groundwork for it. Bearded dragons can get up to about 2 feet. Mine is about 21 inches at the moment, and he's 4 years old. They live about 10 years, obviously. It could be shorter, it could be more, depends on the care, their lineage, everything like that. They are omnivores, so they're not insectivores like leopard geckos, but they're also not fully herbivorous like iguana. Like when they're young, they're gonna wanna eat a lot of insects, protein to help them grow, and as they age, they're gonna incorporate more and more and more vegetables and fruits into their diet. Obviously, vegetables are much more standard than fruits with any reptile or even humans as much, just because there's a lot of sugars in fruits, and that can be a little harmful to their health. If these guys are gonna need a high amount of UVB. With that UVB comes with the calcium, like I was talking about with the crested geckos and the Leos and the gargoyles and the fat tails. But the difference is it's not with D3, it's without D3. They're also gonna need a high UVB bulb, and they're gonna need a high wattage heat lamp. Some people will use name brands, some people will get floodlights from Home Depot. What you choose, just make sure you're doing it right and you're doing your research and you're getting the right temperatures. They like it in the hundreds, 95 to 105, okay? 105 would be better for their basking temperatures, just because they can really get hot when they want to, and they can get away from that heat when they want to. You want to have a good gradient in your enclosure, and you want to watch what you're feeding. I think everything's okay. Most things, obviously there's some that are really bad, but most things are okay in moderation. I don't give Tang spinach very often, but it is a very sparse feeding for him, just because there is things in there that are beneficial for him to have to his diet. And I'm always switching up his food and his vegetables and fruits, and that should be applied with any reptile you own. Variety is key. Handling wise and enclosure cleaning should come with any reptile. It should be obvious. You need clean up their poop, any of their veggies that come out of their enclosure or their food bowl, you clean up. It's not hard. I've seen so many neglected enclosures, so many too small enclosures, and it's insane. It's absolutely insane. Now, enclosure wise, bearded dragons, I think a full size one, if you're looking for a minimum, it should be a 40 breeder. A 40 breeder, they could live comfortably. It's all right. But taking them out, handling them, those are things that can improve their quality of life, even if you have a smaller enclosure. A 20 long should not be for an adult bearded dragon. No matter who you are, no matter how often you take them out, no matter how perfect their enclosure is, it can't be. And the reason why is not only can they not maneuver or live adequately in a 20 long because they're too big, but there's not enough, if you're giving them the adequate amount of heat in a 20 long, there's not enough room for the heat to spread itself out in that enclosure, which means that if your bearded dragon wants to thermoregulate, there's no way in hell that that's going to happen, because it's so hot and there's not enough room for the heat to spread out. So he's like in a sauna all the time, and he never gets to cool down. At least in a 40 breeder, that heat can kind of dissipate and move itself around into different temperatured areas, a low temperatured area, a mid temperature area, hot, and then a really hot. So that allows that to happen. Now that's where I was saying, you know, maybe even a 75, or if you went on Zen Habitats or Animal Plastics, anything like that, or even build something yourself that was a really cool space for them to live in. Now, these animals do live in the desert area. Bedding is always a huge argument. I think if you have a baby, your baby within, I would say the first 4 months of its life, even 6 months to be safe, they should not be on anything but paper towel, carpet, or tile. There should be nothing that they can, like, there should be no loose substrate. Ways to avoid ingesting things is to feed out of a bowl, tongue feed, or do anything of the sort. Bearded dragons are always gonna lick things when they touch stuff or when they climb to a new area. That's normal. That's never not gonna happen. You can't prevent that, but you can prevent throwing crickets in their enclosure or throwing roaches and them trying to dig for the roaches or chase after the crickets and missing them and eating something else. Now, there are other ways to have more digestible products, like Eco Earth is very easy to pass. It's very fine. It's a dirt. That's a very easy thing for them to pass. Sand can be easier. Cypress is really hard to pass because it's obviously a stick. I think number 5 for bearded dragons is a very good spot. I think they are beginner reptiles because they still are very simple, but compared to crested geckos, they are like landslides away. They require UVB, they require this special calcium, they require, you know, this varietized diet of insects and fruits and vegetables. They can also have pinky mice occasionally, once a month to be specific. Like I said, I just felt like incorporating beardies in there just because I feel like they are a very easy species to own. You just have to research, and that's something crucial in owning them. That goes with even crested geckos. You should always do your research before you own them, but at the same time, like I said, bearded dragons are a little more in-depth. They're a little more required. They have a little more requirements and needs, and a lot bigger of an enclosure compared to a crested gecko or a leopard gecko or a gargoyle or a fat tail. But I hope if you are new to my channel and you are just checking this out, that this helped you in any form. If you have any more questions, please know that you can comment down below or go to my Instagram if you want it to be a private message. The Real Rep Family, you can find me anywhere. I do have a blog also, if you haven't checked that out. I do post, I'm gonna start posting twice a week on there, and a lot of them, if you know, want an actual reference to keep up with, a lot of the blog posts are gonna be replicated of my YouTube videos, but more in depth. That way, if you need to refer to something, you don't have to scroll through a video every time you're trying to find the information, especially because sometimes that's just not possible for you to do. I also post every single day of the week, minus once or twice. Most of the time it's once, on a day off if I forget. And I also am doing IGTV videos now as well. So there's a lot of content coming out. I'm always doing new things. I'm always keeping you guys up to date on what's going on. But please, if you have any questions about this in a further explanation type of way, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm always open to any questions, as many as you need. I'm here for it. You're not annoying me, I swear. So if this video did help you out, go ahead and hit that like, sub button. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, whatever in the world it could possibly be, drop a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Let me know how you feel, if this is accurate, if you think this completely whack shit out of my mind crazy. You can let me know that too, I guess. And then if you want to know when I post, go ahead and hit that little bell up above the video. That will let you know when I post, how often I post, because sometimes I change up when I post and how many I'm doing, and sometimes there's a surprise video in there, so you gotta know when that happens. Anyways, and the last thing, if you really enjoy my videos and you enjoy joining me on this crazy journey of life with all of my beautiful reptilian friends, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It would mean the absolute world to me. And most of all, I appreciate you all joining me today on this video, and still coming back after my 2-week hiatus. So thank you guys for watching today. I hope this helped you out. If you're thinking about getting a beginning reptile, or if you're starting into it, or even if you have one of them and you're kind of looking for the next position or next move to go in the reptile world, I hope this helped. And I hope if this didn't help, my snake video helped, depending on what field you're falling into. But thank you again, as always, for watching me, and I will be back very soon. Bye-bye.